All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. We got a video today going over the signal data changes. For many of you who might not know, the signal data seems to have had a little bit of a price change via the weekly shipment store and the kind of crystals that it would cost for those batches of signal data. So we'll go ahead and start with looking at what the price changes are we're seeing. We'll go ahead and get into, what they are versus what they were. We'll touch on how this affects the Jawa deals and whether or not you want to wait for the daily Jawa deals anymore. And then how you should use these new price changes to your benefit, how it's going to affect your farm. And then we'll talk a little bit about whether or not this is going to overall impact the signal data bottleneck. I'm going to say signal data a lot. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the price changes that we're seeing. Okay, so right here I got the weekly shipments pulled up, and at the top you'll see that these are similar deals to the deals that we had last week. So if you didn't get these last week, you missed out on some signal data. I'm sorry. I did warn people in my previous update video, but I understand if not everybody saw that. But consider this your second warning. Okay, so right now for the weekly shipments, we got fragmented signal data at 10 million credits, incomplete signal data at 750 crystals for 50, and then flawed signal data at 1250 crystals for 50. So how do these change ultimately? Well, previously, the only place to get these in the weekly shipments was all the way down here. Keep scrolling past all the gear, and then you get a couple deals for each signal data type per week. Okay, as you can see, the fragmented signal data is 100 for 1500 crystals, so it's not for credits down here. Nobody would expect it, so that's like the temporary deal that they kind of put at the top, and they change it out constantly. I have a feeling that's what Meathead Survey was about not too long ago, but I don't know. That's not confirmed. That's just my speculation. Because when they asked me what I wanted, I said all signal data and droid brains. And lo and behold, before this, we got droid brains, and now we're getting signal data. But anyways, so something interesting to note about the price changes. The fragmented signal data's price in crystals has not changed. It's still 15 crystals per signal data, so 100 for 1500. Now, what they've done is they went ahead and dropped the price of incomplete signal data from 20 crystals per signal data down to 15 crystals per signal data. What that means is it's the same price as the fragmented signal data currently. This is a bit of an oddity, and one of the main reasons why I thought last week that this was an error. I'll get a little bit into why I thought it was an error in a moment, and kind of why maybe I don't think it's the case now. So, but another change to go over before we leave this is that flawed signal data also changed. It used to be 30 crystals per one flawed signal data. Now it's 25 crystals per one flawed signal data. So you can buy 2 packs of 50 in here for $12.50 each, and then plus your normal or the special limited time weekly shipment up top for a total of 3 of these signal data packs. Now, the reason that I thought it was an error last week is because of this right here. The fact that the incomplete signal data is the same pricing as the fragmented signal data. What I speculate, and kind of speculated a little bit less now, was that this was an error because they wanted to offer a limited time deal, right? A deal that was better than it normally is, that you couldn't just buy in the bottom, and it's for a special price. And that's what I thought they changed all the way up here, right? And they lowered the prices, but because it's in the system the same way, for whatever reason, they went ahead and altered the value here, and it altered the value down there, right? So people pointed out that the fragmented signal data didn't change prices too. It's still 10 million credits, while it's 1500 crystals down there. Now, my thinking for that is that this is a different item than the item down there. This is a 50 pack versus the 100 pack that's down there. So just because they changed the 50 pack here doesn't mean that it automatically altered the 100 pack down there, right? However, Now here's where I get into maybe this isn't an error and it's possibly going to be something that we see long term. This is also a 50 pack, and we down here we only have 100 packs of the incomplete signal data. So these are two different items. If they wanted to adjust the price up there for the 50 pack and offer that for a limited special time, it shouldn't have altered the packs down here. So this is kind of leaning more towards this was an intentional change. Why they would leave fragmented signal data at the same price as incomplete signal data, I don't really know. They're not losing any money by doing this. It's not like they're giving us a deal on fragmented signal data. So maybe it's an oversight, or maybe they just don't care to because they don't really want to change the price of fragmented signal data. And they figure if they change the price of the incomplete and flawed, they'll see more relic upgrades, right? This is a possibility. So we don't really know if it's going to be a long-term change, but this is the second week in a row and it seems to be holding steady. The question will ultimately be when it leaves the weekly shipments up top, will it change down here? Right now, we can only go off of what we know and what we see and make our choices accordingly and get the best deals that we can, right? Okay, so that's the prices, what they were, what they are now. And let's go ahead and touch on how these affect the daily Jawa deals, right? Normally, what we would do, well, at least what I would do, is because I would buy the signal data through refreshes, right? I would just farm through Cantina. I wouldn't touch the signal data deal here because, you know, usually whenever you're buying something for crystals, you're paying full price. And there's a premium on paying full price. So we don't do that, right? We farm things in order to get the most value out of them. So what we would see was when we went over to the Jawa deals, right? These daily deals, sometimes you can get big packs of like 160 signal data to show up here, or 120 of the flawed signal data. And you would go ahead and buy these. There would be a little bit of waste because there would be things on the end that you didn't want, like 5 bronziums or something. Ultimately, I don't know if those are going to continue to be a deal, right? So the reason that I don't think they'll continue to be a deal is because if those prices are hard coded according to whatever values they put in, then what we'll see is those daily deals will be about 80% of what they were before. That's roughly about what it was, 75 to 80%, depending on the deal you got, of the full crystal value of the signal data. If those haven't changed, it's going to be a bad deal now because the prices of the signal data have changed. I haven't unfortunately got a signal data deal. I haven't seen anybody necessarily get one. Haven't been checking it religiously, but I haven't seen a signal data deal in months, prior to order 66 even. So I don't really know whether or not they're going to continue to show up here, and if they do show up here, if they're going to be at the old price or they're going to be at the new price. Time will tell. If they end up being 80% of the current crystal price, then they could still end up being a deal. But if not, then I would probably pass on them, honestly. So it's going to be, I'll post as soon as I get a daily deal, but I don't know the next time I'm going to see one at this point, honestly. So I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for them. I wouldn't necessarily hoard crystals just for that purpose. So I'm kind of in the camp of moving on from daily deals. If and when they start showing up again with any regularity, then maybe there's something to talk about there. But so my recommendation for right now is just kind of don't wait for them. Okay. Now, how would we use this new price change to affect our normal farm, right? So for this, I'm going to go ahead and go over to a spreadsheet to kind of give you an idea of what you were farming crystals at with Cantina Energy before. That hasn't really changed, but what you can now buy them for will change whether or not you farm the same things. So going ahead and looking at the spreadsheet, we see that we have the crystal costs at 15, 15, and 25 respectively. When we factor in the 100 refresh crystal cost and we look at the drop rate of the signal data, what we conclude is that it costs 11.1 crystals per signal data when you're farming them through Cantina, right? And then for incomplete signal data, it's 14.8, and flawed signal data is 19.9. Now, previously, the wisdom was because of the price disparity in the crystal shop and the amount that you got from farming, it was best to buy the incomplete signal data. If you were going to spend crystals, spend it on the incomplete signal data and then farm the fragmented and the flawed signal data. This has remained true, and it's gotten even better to the point of buying incomplete signal data for crystals is almost the same cost as doing it through refreshes. So what that means is there's no reason to refresh and buy incomplete signal data, because you could just buy it out of weekly shipments for about the same cost. Therefore, because you can't get as good of a deal on fragmented and flawed signal data, you want to make sure that you're using your refreshes to go ahead and farm the fragmented and the flawed signal data according to your needs, right? So that's my ultimate recommendation with these prices for while these prices are active. You want to go ahead and buy the incomplete signal data out of the weekly shipments, and then go ahead and farm the fragmented and flawed signal data out of the Cantina nodes. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how this is going to affect the bottleneck. Okay, now if there was only one shipment in weekly shipments per week that you could buy, I think there's 2 down there for fragmented signal data, and now we have a bonus one for a couple weeks. That's not overall going to move the needle a ton on the bottleneck farm, because a lot of people were buying signal data from the weekly shipments anyway. But for those that weren't, now you'll want to, because it's going to drastically speed up your signal data farm. That being said, it's still not going to overall change the bottleneck because we need so much signal data. However, something I noticed that could ultimately affect the bottleneck is the fact that it's not only showing up in the weekly shipments. So if we go over here to the featured shipments, your normal ones that refresh every 6 hours, 4 times a day, we see that we have a 10-pack of that incomplete signal data here. Now, this isn't guaranteed, this doesn't show up every time, but it shows up a lot. And I hadn't really noticed it because normally I wouldn't even think to buy signal data with crystals. I personally don't spend crystals on that because I think it's a little bit too steep, right? Well, we know it's steep. It's the steepest price in the game for signal data, because otherwise you would just farm it, right? But now the fact that it's close to the same price as the farm, I've been looking at this and I asked people and they said that it was in the shipments the whole time. All I can say is last week this showed up for the majority of the time. Every refresh almost was incomplete signal data. I bought it several times, and when this new weekly shipment took over a day or 2 ago, it was gone. It wasn't showing up until last night, and it showed up again. So I got a few refreshes where it didn't show up and I was a little bit worried, but now it's showing up. So basically what this means is you have the potential to farm a whole lot more incomplete signal data per week than just the weekly shipments, right? Because if you're getting, say 20, if every other one has incomplete signal data in it, if you're getting 20 a day, that's 160, 140 a week, right? That adds a whole lot more. That's like buying all the weekly shipments and then some. So here's the thing. If this changes our signal data bottleneck substantially because of this and the weekly shipments, and then we're farming the other ones, ultimately, will it continue to be the biggest bottleneck in the game? For now, I think yes, because one, we don't have crystals forever, so we're gonna have to eventually run out of crystals if we're just constantly buying these. We might have enough to sustain it, but you're not gonna have a whole lot of crystals to buy anything else, right? And then also, when we look at the farms, right, and the rate at which we can get other relic mats, we'll go ahead and go back over to really quick, we'll go look at the scavenger, get that ready. But when we look at the farms on not the spreadsheet, but I track my gear using SWGOH events, and I kind of track all my farms. It's a great tool. I highly recommend everybody use it. I'll make a video on it at some point, But for now, looking at this, I got the pirates involved. Okay, so Kix, Quiggle, Captain Nathano. I'm ready to take Hondo to R9, Ray Scavenger, General Skywalker for the Rex. Okay, so I'm planning on all that. The conquest units aren't required for Hondo, but I figure as soon as they come out, I'll probably get them at Relic 5. And then you see these terrible tunes over here that nobody would really take to R9 unless they were a requirement for something. I'm using them as placeholders for the era after Pirates. Whatever that era is, I hopefully want to participate in the era battle, so I'm looking at whaling out on those if I have the crystals. That's part of my plan. So that's what these are placeholding. I already have these at Relic, so it's not adding any gear. It's just a placeholder for what that Relic material and signal data farm is going to look like. So when we scroll down here, we see that I need some electrium conductors, I need some Zinbiddles, impulse detectors, arrow magnifiers, geared as droid brains, right? And then I need the signal data down here. This shows me how many days roughly that I can farm the signal data in. Now with the relic mats, I actually have most of these stored in salvaged gear, right? When we look at how many I need, right? If we look at electrium conductors, go back over to the game, scroll over here to electrium conductors. I have a lot of stored gear and I have everything pretty much at gear 12, or relic 1 rather. So, you know, I already have a ton of this saved up, and that's not even crafting with purple gear to make sure that I have it. So electriums are taken care of, and we're talking about a farm all the way through next era. So I have plenty of it in reserves. Relic materials are not going to be the bottleneck for this for some time, right? So more than enough to take care of all this. And then impulse detectors, kind of the same thing, even though they come in a little bit quicker. Now, arrow magnifiers, I'm currently spending all my MK3 on, and I can't make droid brains, right? So essentially going back and looking at the farm over here, none of this is really an issue. I can farm all this. I'll have all this well before the characters even come out next era. But I still need about 50 days worth of signal data. Now that's obviously going to get reduced a great deal by events, right? Going back and looking at the calculator, there's a fair amount of signal data that we get per month from just like assault battles, territory battles, conquest even. And especially now that I'm kind of not doing things in 3 conquests, I have a lot more conquest currency to spend on signal data. But this is going to make a pretty hefty dent in that. So it's not exactly 50 days, but it is going to get diminished quite a bit when I start buying these weekly shipments. However, I'm already done with all the gear and relic mats that I really need for like all these requirements basically. Except droid brains, right? But those will come in as the air battles keep on continuing and as we get territory wars. So those are kind of like on a timed clock. I'll have enough, if I even need that many, to go ahead and take care of the next era's air battles. So relic mats just aren't a thing, and gear is like almost gone, right? This is like almost taken care of too. So at the end of the day, all we have right now is signal data. I know this may not be the case for a lot of you, but this is where everybody ends up, right? We all end up at the same place. Signal data is the bottleneck in this game. I am glad that they're doing something to alleviate some of the hurt on that. It's gonna help a lot, especially if you're not taking characters to Relic 7 and Relic 9 and you don't need as much fragment or flawed signal data. But unfortunately, it still is the bottleneck. Now with them changing things like this, I am a little suspicious if they're going to introduce something new, right? To make sure that we have something else to farm. But right now it looks like I'm gonna have everything in time to take care of everything that I need to take care of. I don't know if, you know, anything that's currently in the game is going to be enough of a roadblock to kind of stop me from getting something, and I kind of feel like maybe something might be around the corner, but that would be just complete speculation. We've been speculating on that for a long time, but people are starting to get more Relic 9s, especially with the air battles and all these requirements for the new GLs. So time will tell. ultimately, recommendation is buy the incomplete signal data from the store, farm it from the fragmented and the flawed signal data from the Cantina nodes, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully it continues. Hopefully those prices stay the same. Hopefully fragmented signal data comes down a little bit, but again, time will tell. Okay, so hopefully you got value out of this video. If you did, hit the like button, go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more analysis like this, and hit the notification bell so you know when it goes up. Have a nice day, everybody. Bye.